And long story short, I've been doing what he said. And yesterday, I didn't take it today. Yesterday it was 126 over 64. So God is good, and I believe God can use Dr. Collins to help us adjust some things in our lives. Any questions before we begin? He'll have questions for him later, but anything about the facility, I'm here to help you. Anything you need, please let me know. I consider it an honor to help. So that having been said, let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you have given us bodies to live for you, and we thank you so much that you have given natural things that we can do that our bodies might heal themselves. And Lord, today as we begin this seminar and throughout the seminar, we just ask that you will give us the clear understanding we need, and that Dr. Collins' words will be translated into words that will be meaningful for our particular situations, and that we will be better children of yours because we're following your principles. Thank you so much for hearing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good afternoon. Well, I can see that the ladies definitely outnumber the men. So, gentlemen, where are the rest of you? Believe it or not, the topic that we're going to talk about this afternoon is applicable to both men and ladies, so but I'm going to tell you something. You ladies at least have a desire to be healthier than the men. That's a 40-year opinion, because I have been in practice 40 years now. So the ladies, not on? The ladies, let me get it up a little higher. If I can blow on it, I should be able to talk. Now if I can get it back on my tie. How's that? Is that better? Usually it picks up good. We'll try the lapel. I don't think it's going to help. I'm going to stay with the tie. Is that any better? If it was a smaller church, I'd get rid of this and just talk to you. My voice normally carries fairly well. But anyway, thank you. Where was I at? I was picking on the men and asking why they weren't here. And in my career, I find that ladies in general have a greater interest in being healthier than the men do. That's been my experience for the past 40 years. The topic for today, though, applies to men and women equally. I'm going to get... Testing. Don't usually get dressed in front of people, but you know how it is. Okay. The reason I believe is because men are scared of doctors. I'm scared of doctors. I don't scare myself too frequently, but I would prefer to avoid it. I don't like the examinations. I don't like what they do to me. And so therefore I try to stay so healthy I don't need a doctor, and that's what our goal is today. And if you've read let me get back here. If you read what Thomas Edison said, Not only was he an inventor ahead of his time, he didn't think about just his inventions. What he said about medicine was incredible. This is the doctor of the future, and I'm hoping this is the future, will give no medicine. Interesting thought, isn't it? How many people in the United States really, truly need medications? Out of 100% of the people that take the medications, there may be 10% who really need medication. So don't get upset at me yet, okay? There's a big if here. That's a big word. If they were willing to change their life and live according to the principles their body is run on, the laws that are innately in the body, we could take 90% of the people off medications. So let's put the blame where it belongs. It's at my feet or at your feet. You have a choice, and I'm hoping that I'm going to start today giving you back part of your choice. But we'll interest the patients in the care of the human frame, in proper diet, and the cause and prevention of disease. Do you know why you're sick? If you don't know why you're sick, then there's no way you have a chance of getting better. And believe me, you should be asking your doctor a question. Well, you have essential hypertension. Well, what in the world does that mean, doc? He says, well, essential means that we really don't know. Well, thanks, doc. Now I know you don't know why I'm sick, so maybe I need a different doctor. And if they use the word idiopathic, run out of the, just get up and leave the office immediately. Because idiopathic means your doctor caused your problem. So leave immediately. Now, if you're a doctor in my audience, smile with me a little bit, okay? Because I treat doctors too, because actually some of them want to be healthy. But if you go to a doctor that has high blood pressure and he's treating your high blood pressure, I'm concerned about both of you. If you're going to a doctor who weighs more than you do, you're going to the wrong doctor to help you get healthy. See, I believe that doctors need to practice what they preach, because if they don't believe what they're doing, and if their own treatment hasn't helped them, in other words, if I walked up front here, and I'm going to be teaching you how to have optimum weight, and I weighed 300 pounds, I'd expect of you to come through the door, take one look at me, and say, have a good afternoon, and leave. Because if it doesn't work for you, or if it doesn't work for me, how in the world can it ever work for anybody else? And I'm supposed to be educated on this. Here's my patient, Mary Ann Wall, 76 years old. She's a school teacher. She decides to change. That is her pants. She's not just playing a game here. After a year and a half of being on her vegan diet, she now weighs half her weight. She weighed about 240 pounds. In this picture, she's about 120. When she showed me her picture, I said, may I have that? And do you mind if I use your name? She said, no, you don't have to use my name, and you're welcome to the picture. I said, well, I'm definitely going to use that, because you can look at me, and I've never seen myself weighing. I don't have a picture like this to show you. So I can show you about what other people have accomplished with them. She is obviously pleased as punch. She's got a whole new life, and she's an advocate for going out on a plant-based diet. And believe me, she's almost getting evangelistic about it. I mean, she is just so pleased because that made it for her. Now, let me ask the question. If it was a program only for her and helped no one else, then she's just a real lucky person, lost her weight. I'm going to turn this around. In 40 years of practice, I have not seen one person, not one of my patients, who hasn't been successful on what I'm going to be talking about today. So it's not about the program anymore, folks. We have got the program. The question is, am I willing to do the program? You say, well, that's simple, Doc. You could just put us all on the water diet for the next 3 years, and we'd all weigh nothing. Well, we're going to do more than talk about water today, even though hydration is important. What's happened is that we have been set up to some extent, and I want to show you what has happened to the menu, and maybe this will help a little bit. 20 years ago, your bagel was 140 calories. Now it is 350 calories. How long would it take if you're raking leaves to burn that 210 calories difference between those two? It would take you about, close to an hour. Now, how many people eat their bagel for breakfast and go rake leaves for an hour to work it off? I'm also going to demonstrate that you don't lose weight through exercise. So many people walk in my office and they've gained 4 pounds and they say, I haven't been doing my exercise, and so I smile. Now, this is not meaning that exercise isn't important. It doesn't mean exercise doesn't improve circulation. It doesn't mean that exercise isn't healthy for you, but you don't lose weight doing exercise. If you don't believe me, go to the gym tomorrow morning, take pictures of everybody that goes in the gym. Come back a year later and take pictures of the same person that goes to the gym. And then some people have the nerve to tell me I'm a healthy fat. Well, you can call it what you want, but my point is this. You lose weight by what goes in right here. Exercise can help. Yes, you burn calories. But no one is going to go out there and rake leaves for an hour to take care of their bagel. How about their hamburger? Well, cheeseburger here, 333 calories, 590. You can't win with this situation, folks. Extra 250 calories. If you lift weights, work out about an hour and 30 minutes. For one, believe me, it's a lot easier to skip the hamburger. How about spaghetti? 500 calories in your 20 years ago. Presently, over 1,000 calories. Eating has become a national pastime. Have you noticed? How long will it take? Doing household chores to burn those calories, 500 and extra 20 calories, about 2.5 hours. If it takes you 2.5 hours to clean your house, maybe the house is too big. There are advantages to living in smaller square footages, aren't there? I can clean my motorhome in probably 10 minutes flat. Now, granted, my children are grown and have children, so I'm not dealing with chasing toys all over the place, but anyway. Okay, French fries, 210 calories. French fries, 610 calories. An extra 400 calories, I'd have to walk for an hour and 10 minutes. And very few people are going to do that. People get upset. I'm saying, okay, here's your piece of apple. By the way, I like apple pie. Here's your piece of apple pie, and of course you want a little bit of ice cream on top. I'm going, how far are you ready to walk for that? They look at me and go, that'll cost you 5 miles. No, we burn about 100 calories per mile. It is much easier to have half that piece of apple pie, because when do you enjoy your food the most? The first bite or the last bite? If we could always have the first bite experience in every bite, then we would have an incredible set of taste buds, number one. It is the time that the food is in your mouth that you enjoy your food, not how much is in the stomach. It's in the mouth that you get your satisfaction. Please always remember that. So your best dessert is the first mouthful. From there it goes downhill. So if someone serves you at a fancy restaurant and they only give you 3 tablespoons of this incredible dessert, don't think they're trying to rip you off. That's all you should have anyway. They may charge you too much for it, I'll admit that, but soda, soft drinks, 85 calories, 6.5 ounces. Now this is not even that big of a serving. 12 ounces, 20 ounces, well, that's getting to be a big one, 250 calories. How long is it going to take us if we go out and work in the garden to burn off those calories? About 35 minutes. But when you're out there sweating, you drink another one anyway, right? So then you got to work another half hour. This can go in a cycle here. Turkey sandwich, 320 calories, 820 calories, a sub, 500 calories. If you ride your bike, how long is that going to take you? About an hour and a half. By the way, there's nothing wrong with exercise. I'm just saying that if you try to eat and exercise to make up for your extra eating, it is a losing proposition. Well, no, it's not a losing, it's a gaining proposition. Okay. If weight was only due to cosmetic reasons, I feel like I'll be wasting your time today. I think you decide how you want to look and how you want to feel, and all. I think that's totally up to you. But extra weight is not just about cosmetic. It's about how long you live. It's about how many doctor's offices. In this particular slide, I'm showing you that we're looking at ladies here. We're talking about breast cancer, and we're going to look at, does it make a difference? It makes a major difference. A premenopausal lady, she's still having her cycles. A thin one, we set their risk equal to 1. Now, do thin ladies, very few of them, by the way, do thin ladies have breast cancer before they go through menopause? Very rare and very few. Now, we come down to the same group, still having their cycles. If they're overweight, they have twice the risk. If they're obese, they have 3 times the number. Now, let's look at the postmenopausal group. The risk is equal to 1 in a thin lady who's postmenopausal, 5 times this rate if they're here, and 12 times if they're overweight. That's enough. No, I can't get, well, I take it back. There are few men, believe it or not, that do get breast cancer. Now, that is extremely, extremely rare. I treat a lot of unusual conditions, not unusual people, unusual conditions, and I see things that most doctors don't see because they come to me because they don't want to be drugged, they don't want to be over-medicated. They say, maybe Collins can help me. So I've had the privilege through my 40 years of seeing a lot, but I have never seen a male with breast cancer. So that means there's about 400 a year in the United States. That's a very low rate. But back to the ladies, 12 times the risk. That doesn't mean that every lady in the group gets that. It just means that in that group, there's many more that get breast cancer. How about colon cancer? What happens with the bowel? The higher the fiber diet, the less likely you are to get colon cancer. Let's take a look. How about meals? How many meals a day you eat make a difference? Well, those ladies that ate, this isn't ladies, this is colon cancer. If they ate 2 meals a day, their rate of rectal cancer was 1, and their rate of colon cancer was 1. If they eat 3 meals a day, it almost doubled, and 1.5. If they eat 4 or more meals a day, it almost is double in both situations. So there's something about how frequent we eat and what causes cancer of the intestinal tract. The number 1 cancer in ladies is still lung cancer. I'm talking about deaths now. The number 1 cancer for male and female is skin cancer, but very few people die from skin cancer unless you got the bad one, the melanomas. The second cause of cancer in ladies is breast, and third is colon. For men, lungs is still number 1. Number 2 is colon, and number 3 is prostate. Now, if you don't smoke, you can almost get rid of number 1. There are very few people who get cancer who don't smoke. Some still do. If you eat a high-fiber diet, for the most part, you can get rid of this cancer here. And then we're stuck with 2 other ones, prostate in men, breast in female. I just showed you about extra weight that you carry. Your fat tissue actually is not just a storage tissue. It actually puts off hormones into your bloodstream that totally affect the inflammatory part on your immune system. The higher the inflammation level in your body, the more depressed your immune system is. Meat use in breast cancer. Everybody thinks those poor people only have rice and beans to eat. Guess what? It's the people they work for that have steak every night that has to have all the medical attention. So if you were raised on pinto beans or black-eyed peas and collard greens, congratulations. It's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, I hope you're proud of it because you had good eating. Low socioeconomic status, they're not too wealthy. They get meat occasionally or rarely at all, usually because of economic reasons. Their risk of meat use in breast cancer, 1. The high socioeconomic status, eating meat daily, 8.5 times the risk. You start going, is it worth it? See, 70 to 75% of the world population is vegetarian. About 70% of that group doesn't have a choice. Okay? You see my point? They can't afford animals. We can afford animal in the United States because we're wealthy. And you may not feel very wealthy today, but when you look at the people in Haiti, you go, wow. What I make in one day, they're good to make in a whole year. It's just hard. It's just totally hard to believe. But the reality is that America, I'm in North Carolina. I'm going to tell some North Carolina tales. I'm in this state, okay. Not in our part of the state, and I'm thankful, but in the eastern part of the state, we have a lot of hog farms. We have the same number of pigs in this state as we have people. I'm not trying to make a correlation here at all, folks. I'm trying to make a point because at least it shocked me. So we've got about 10 million people in this great state of North Carolina and about 10 million hogs. Most of them are in large farms, eastern part of the state. Here's the incredible thing that got my attention, because I don't eat bacon, and you can if you want to, but that's not my point. My point is that one pig puts off 10 times, I hope you all had lunch, okay? It puts off 10 times the fecal material that the humans in this state put off. Do the math real quick, folks. That means I've got 100 million worth of septic problems in my pig farmers than I have in humans. How much can this ground around the North Carolina farms in the eastern part of our state, how much fecal material can it handle? Talk about water supply, talk about pollution, talk about everything. You start getting head for the mountains. Maybe that's why you live here. But why? Why do we do that? Is it just our taste buds? Is it just because we think we've had to have it? Or maybe we've been raised. And if you don't have bacon for breakfast, you haven't had breakfast maybe. I don't know how you were raised. Well, I might as well just spill the whole story. I guess I was going to say spill the beans. That'd be appropriate. I want to tell you how biased I am, so don't get too aggravated at me, okay? I'm born and raised a vegetarian. I don't even like steak if you fry it and put it on my plate. So that's how biased I am, okay? Now, growing up, we had what we called lacto-ovo-vegetarians. Yes, we had a cow, and yes, I can milk cows by hand. Yes, we had goats. I know how to milk them too. And yes, we raised chickens, a lot of them. So I've eaten my share of eggs. I've drunk my share of cow's milk, but that terminated about 35 years ago. And the best way to get cured is eat college food. You know, if the egg happens to fly off your plate, it'll hit the floor and bounce back on, you know. So you didn't have to worry about eating too many eggs in college. So I did okay there. That broke me of my egg habit. It's okay, I don't need them anymore. They're just a little bit too rubbery. Eating meat, poultry, and fish increases ovarian cancer. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians explain that I was back then. Eggs and milk, their age-adjusted mortality, death rate per 100,000 was 15. If they eat some meat, it goes up to 18. If they eat meat 4 times a day or more, it goes up. Why am I picking on meat so much? It's not just the pollution, it's not just the production, it's the most inefficient way to feed a population. If I gave you the corn, instead of feeding the hog, I can feed 10 of you to 1 pig. We really don't have world hunger, we have meat excess. Right now, every person in this world can be well fed on the food we're producing in this world right now if we don't feed it to animals first. We have about 330 million in the United States. We are capable of feeding well over 1 billion people with our present production, With nothing changes of what we're doing right now, we could feed 3 times the United States, no problem. And here's the shocking thing. No extra cost, because we're already producing this already. So I don't have an excuse for world hunger, because there is no excuse, except that I don't have to have my bacon for breakfast. If I'm willing to give up my bacon, then many people, 10 times that amount, can be fed. Over obesity and increased risk of death from cancer, this is just in general. The more overweight I am, the more likely that I'm going to die of cancer. So what is the connection? What does weight have to do with cancer? Weight in cancer is a good analogy, because weight, when it goes up, not only affects your immune system, but weight, when it goes up, is abnormal tissue growth. And what is cancer? Abnormal tissue growth. Is being overweight malignant? No, but it sure looks that way, because it sure seems to spread all over me, doesn't it? My point is this, that when you have excess fuel to run the body, you take a much greater chance of having genetic anomalies. The faster I grow a tissue, the more mistakes are going to be made. And so basically, cancer is an overfed situation. The best and oldest cure for cancer, I know this isn't a cancer talk, but it's sounding that way. The best and oldest cure for cancer is very simple. It's called starvation. That is the oldest. And you take all the fancy naturopaths and all the doctors in natural medicine, every technique they use for helping a person with cancer is just basically some manifestation of a starvation diet. And if you don't believe me, try them. You go, I have. They wanted me to eat nothing but raw food for the rest of my life. Well, that is a nice way to starve, isn't it? Not literally, I'm being a little bit facetious here. But when you drop the calories, your normal cell does something totally different than a cancer cell. Your normal cell in starvation mode will get much more efficient. It'll detoxify itself. You'll stimulate your immune system right on through to your mast cells. That's the cell that can go into any form you want. And they took it one step further. And they said, if a person will fast a day or two before they even have chemotherapy, which, by the way, I'm not recommending here, I'm just giving you a point. If a person will fast for 2 to 3 days before having their injection of chemotherapy, guess what happens to the cancer cells? They are so hungry, they eat that chemotherapy up, and you get a much better kill rate. So even if a person has got cancer and they're doing chemotherapy, they still get benefit from fasting. The oldest cure to man. Step 1. The most single important cause of diabetes is insulin resistance. And as we put on more fat weight, the body can't handle it. And it keeps putting out more and more insulin. And you keep this thing. So what do you see? I did my doctoral work on diabetes. I was back in the day when people thought that you had to eat a high-protein, high-fat diet to control your diabetes. So when I did my research, I proved that I could put people on a high-carbohydrate diet and take them off insulin. And they went, I'd get stopped in the hall at my medical clinic that I was first out. That's when I looked young. I'd be in the hallway and get stopped by a doctor, and he goes, "You took my patient off insulin." And, of course, my response is, I'm young and out of school and gullible. I said, well, isn't that the role? Aren't we supposed to try to get these people off their medication? If they're not sick, why do they need drugs? Well, if you would have seen the looks I got in the silent treatment, you go, "What? I didn't say anything wrong. What are we supposed to be doing here, folks?" The people thanked me. The patient was happy. Isn't that the point? If the patient's happy, then the doc should be happy. Well, anyway, I continued. But when I say carbohydrates, I don't mean I put them on sugar. I put them on broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower and beets and carrots and cucumbers until they probably thought they were coming out their ears. But they were so thankful because there's a lot of people that are considered type 1 diabetics that may not be. They may be a type 2 diabetic that's got a very compromised pancreas. But as long as a person is still making some insulin, I've got something to work with. When the pancreas is totally gone, they have to take a certain amount of insulin, but they can take less insulin. The reason I'm spending time on insulin is one of your biggest reasons why people are overweight. Insulin is one of the biggest reasons why people are overweight. Because when we put on a pound, we get a little bit of insulin resistance. We put on 10 pounds, get more insulin. And so the body keeps making more insulin. The function of insulin is to take blood sugar in the bloodstream and put it into storage. So how is blood sugar in the bloodstream stored in the body? In the form of fat. And you go, that's not fair. And I'm saying, would you rather have it the other way? Would you rather have your body put glucose, blood sugar, into glycogen storage? Guess how much you would weigh? About 3 times what you do right now. God did not make a mistake. Glucose gets stored as fat. If it didn't, we'd all look like the Michelin Man, okay? So don't knock that. So, insulin puts stuff into storage. Here's the hard part. It won't let the fat come out of storage. Oh, what a scenario. The hormone that forces and keeps our blood sugar where it should be, as long as that level stays up, you can't break down the fat and get it out. So the only way I can help a person lose weight is to drop their insulin level. Their insulin level has to come down for them to be able to get and use fat. So now you know a cardinal rule about losing weight already. Sugar in its refined form isn't just because it's sweet, isn't just because I don't like it. By the way, I have the same taste buds you do. I like sweets. I do like apple pie. But the higher the sugar level actually won't allow your body to lose weight. So when you hear of a weight loss gem, number 1 is you can't eat sugar. If you do, you're slowing down your progress. In fact, you may almost be inhibiting it. Being overweight increases the chance of developing type 2 diabetes 7 times. Being obese makes you 20 to 40 times more likely to develop diabetes. This is why we have this epidemic. I've been here before and I've spoken just on diabetes, but right now, what I had said before hasn't changed. It is the number 1 disease in the world. Not the number 1 death rate in the world, but the number 1 disease. And if we keep going over the next 20 years, diabetes will be our major cause of death in the world, not just the United States. It's not just us, folks. Europe has got the problem. Eskimos have the problem. You go around the world, populations that have excess food supply are diabetic. Just plan on it. Losing weight can help, obviously, if your weight is above the healthy weight rate. Losing 7 to 10% of your current weight can cut your risk in half. You don't have to lose 100 pounds like Mary Ann Wall did to be not diabetic anymore. 7 to 10%. So if I weigh 200 and I drop 14 pounds, I reduce my risk of diabetes significantly, twice. Coffee and bladder cancer, but doc, I only drink 1 cup. If I had $1 for every time I hurt, I could retire. People coming to me, I go, but I only drink 1 cup. Well, how much strychnine would you drink? Oh, just a small dose. Well, that's enough to do it. If you want to have problem losing weight, drink coffee. What does coffee do? Coffee increases the adrenaline. It also increases your cortisol levels. Cortisol levels made by your adrenal glands sitting there above your kidneys causes you to do what? Why do we give beef cattle steroids? Any of you farmers, any of you beef farmers, why do you give the cows steroids? Because you're going to make between 7 to 10% more money when they go to the market because they've got 7 to 10% more weight. If you want to gain weight, drink more coffee. Now, let's be fair. If you did nothing else, you ate no food and only drank coffee, would you lose weight? The answer is a definite yes. You have to have fuel. But this is above and on. Yes. By the way, I've never heard of the coffee diet. At least not past breakfast. Body mass index, for those of you who like notes and like math, I'm going to show you how they calculate it, okay? Example, your weight, well, this is me here. Let's go up here. Your weight times 107 divided by height squared. Not really, this is not heavy algebra, okay? So let's take an example. If I weigh 150 pounds, I multiply that times 703, and I have a number of 105,450. If I take my height, I'm 5'10", so 70 times 70 is 4,900. So set yourself up that way. Put your numbers in. Do the math. Get out your phone. Do the math. And the BMI is 21.5. Body mass index. It is calculated by your height and your weight. Why do we like this one? Because almost on every one, we know height and weight. We don't have to submerge you underwater and weigh you to find out what your percent body fat is. If you don't go to the gym and grab one of those impedance testers to tell what your percent body fat is, most everyone has their height and weight. Pretty simple. Now, the reason I show you this is we're going to talk about body mass index as an indicator for whether I need to gain or lose. The categories are three. We have overweight but not obese. Then we have grade 1, 2, and 3 in men and women. But this is percentage, okay? From 1988 to 1994, I want you to look at the numbers. 99 to 2002, 2003, 2006, 2009 to 2012. What do you see happening here? The total chart is definitely higher. We went from 60 to about 71% of our population. So we're up in this period of time, 88 to 2012. So the total numbers are up. But what do you see? What I see is the overweight group is decreasing. But what happened to them? They shifted up into grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. They also call this the super obese category, went up. That's the men, ladies. Can you believe that? Look at the ladies. We men should be ashamed. You start at like 56%. You're up at 64, 65%. Would you believe that if I tell you that there's more obese men in the United States than there are women? Well, that's not a fair question. I'm asking ladies. Of course they're going to say yes. If you had asked me that question and I didn't have my charts, guess what I would have told you? You say, well, you're a man, you're biased. No, I really believed that about men. I had to change my opinion. Men are more obese, more larger, and in all the categories than you ladies. So congratulations, ladies. But don't get too pleased with your congratulations because we still have work to do. Grade 1, the BMI, the body mass index, 20 to 25, we consider that acceptable. Above 25 to 30, we call it overweight, and then here's your different grades we talked about. But you know what? If you like numbers, great. If you don't like numbers, don't worry about it. Because knowing your number, does that make you healthy? Does knowing your blood pressure make you healthy? Does knowing your cholesterol number make you healthy? So I'm not going to hear and badger you about numbers. What I'm going to tell you is that it's what you do and what's in your refrigerator and it's what's in the cabinet that changes everything. It's not the numbers. We get confused. We go to the doctor and he says, your cholesterol number is this. And we say, thank you, doctor. And pay them their fee. And you go home. You go, well, what did that do? Well, I know my number. Well, numbers never cured anybody. Don't get stuck on that. If your doctor isn't telling you how to change your life, then you're going to be needing a doctor for the rest of your life. I've challenged you before. Maybe you're going to do it. I want you to get so healthy you put me out of business. How's that? That's actually my goal. So when you get so healthy, you say, I go, man, I haven't seen anybody for a month. This is incredible. I'm going to have to go out and get a job. When that happens, I know that you folks are doing great. Okay, body mass index and relative risk for diabetes. I'm not going to take a lot of time with this slide, but the white boxes and the black ones are just different studies. But at every point, as the BMI goes up, the rate of diabetes continues to go up until we get to the BMI of greater than 40. Basically, 90 to 95% in that group are diabetic. No exceptions. Now you see why I'm concerned about weight. If you like a pretty chart, here it is. Let's go with it, okay? You take your weight on this column. It will take me, I'm 150 area, and I go across here and find my height at 70, so it puts me at 21, 22 BMI. It's just a simple way, and if you don't have to do all your math and multiply 703 by your height and your weight and squared and all this fancy stuff, they just make it easy on us. Here's the part that hurts. Overweight moms and dads, pass it on. This is the group that we're seeing the greatest increase in diabetes. 1971 to 74, two age groups. The red is age 6 to 12. The bluish one is 12 to 19. Look what's happened to us in America. Our children, 4% and about 3.5%, over 6%, over 10%, we're heading towards 20%. I felt so sorry, or bad, how you want to think about it, because when I went to elementary school, did you want to be the one kid in the class who was overweight? I mean, you might as well have the plague. It might as well be leprosy. If they survived that, and now they're probably the ones that are your computer guru that hire you, but the point is, I felt so sorry for them. So I'm glad that the stigma is less. Kids are less worried about it, but I would like them to be just as concerned about their health. I don't like to see people being emotionally abused, but I also don't want them to be physically abused in this situation here. Food has become a pastime. I challenge men. Maybe I should challenge ladies. I challenge men. I said, will you please take your wife out and do something besides eat? And what's the man say? What else is there to do? Hey, gentlemen, can't we get any more creative? Have you ever heard of flowers? Have you ever heard, there's got to be something else. See how convenient we've made it? And we set ourselves up. And even when you're trying to lose weight and trying to follow your program, how many of your friends come along and sabotage you? From church potlucks to bazaars to every place you go, they want to sell you something. I have people come to my door and want to sell me something. I give them a donation and tell them to take their candy bar with them. I'm not against their project. I don't need their candy. And they want to sell me the candy bar. I'm going, no, you keep the candy bar. Here, you're going to make double money. Watch this. I'm going to pay you, and you go sell it to somebody else. Well, what I should do is take it and give it to the dog. Anyway. Dietary trends have changed significantly. And you can say, you don't know my granddad. My granddad ate fatback, and he took his bacon grease and he poured that over his greens. He called it killing his greens. And he ate his cornbread, and he ate his pinto beans, and he ate his ham hock. And you're telling me he's healthier than I am? Yes, I am. Watch this. Grandpa, 1860, 1810, depending on how old you are. Look what happened in America. These blue lines here, these lighter blue lines, are your protein intake. Gone up slightly. Not a major change in protein intake in the last 100 plus years. Look at the next bar here. This is your fat intake. Fat intake, go, wait a minute. All that fat back and bacon, how in the world am I eating more fat now than what Grandpa did? Read your labels, folks. It will totally shock you. Grandpa probably didn't have potato chips. Let's go to the next column. The blue column is sugar intake. From 10%, 13%, 16, 24, keep on going. And the last one is starch. Started at 53% and came down. If you show me this one graph, and it's that easy to read, on any population anywhere in the world, guess what you'll find out? This population has diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Change your food, this pattern right here, and you get those major diseases. Some of you have seen this before. I guess a review won't hurt. Dr. Capps, a medical doctor, decided that, or his perception was, it's not what you ate, but when you ate makes the difference. I happen to believe that both are important. But let's go with his point because he makes a very valid point. He said, okay, I've got 3 rules that you need to follow if you want to be part of my program. By the way, this guy is kind of incredible. His reputation is that he practiced over 7 decades. It doesn't mean that he was in practice over 70 years. What it means is he practiced in parts of 7 decades. So he could have been, but the least he could have practiced was 61 years. So we'll give him credit, okay? I'm not planning to break his record. So he said the first rule is, I'm going to sound like your mother here, the first rule is you have to eat breakfast. The second rule is you can have a snack if you want to. The third rule of a have-tos is you can't eat 8.5 hours before you go to bed. You can't eat 8.5 hours before you want to go to bed. So if you eat at 1:30, you go to bed at 10. Look what happened to the people in his study. And by the way, he didn't say you couldn't eat at McDonald's. He didn't say you couldn't eat fried chicken. He didn't say any of that. He wanted to prove a point. Those who ate breakfast only, that's 1 meal a day. That's almost a crime here in the United States, but around the world, they're thankful for that. Those who eat only breakfast lost an average of 10 pounds a month. Not too bad. In fact, I wouldn't want you going any more rapidly than that, because people who lose a lot more rapidly than that usually have to have a gallbladder taken out in the next 24 months. Those who ate breakfast, lunch, and snacks average a 5 or 6 pound weight loss per month. Remember the 3 rules they were following, though, okay? Those who lost 20 to 30 pounds, so the first group, that'd be 2 or 3 months. The second group, 4 or more months, showed an increase in hemoglobin level. Oh my, they weren't getting anemic. They weren't getting more sickly. Their energy was improving. Their hemoglobin level actually went up with all this change in food diet. Blood sugar levels of diabetic patients who lost 30 pounds or more were, if you have normal blood sugar, are you a diabetic? You're absolutely correct. Diabetes is defined by an elevated blood sugar. That is the medical criteria for diabetes. If you do not have elevated blood sugar, then you shouldn't have that diagnosis. Now, most of you here in this room are not worried about your diagnosis, because Medicare doesn't worry about your diagnosis. But when I speak to people who are in their 30s, this is one diagnosis you don't want on your medical record, because what will it do for you for the rest of your life? Your insurance premiums can be 1, 2, or 3 times the rate. So when a person walks in my office, I ask them how long they want to be diabetic. You got to cheer people up somehow. And they look at me like, especially the first time they meet me. But the point is, I say, listen, I can write all these dirty words on your chart. Or you can go on the program and we'll check your blood sugar again. And if your blood sugar is normal, then why do I need to write this on your chart? Guess what happens? Some people take me up on that. And some people are not diabetic. They really aren't. They just live the diabetic lifestyle, and when they change their lifestyle, they get this benefit. How about this? Low thyroid patients showed a reduction in daily thyroid maintenance requirements. Their medications on their program, they were able to reduce their medications. I think it's worth it. Does it work? And how fast does it work? Of course, we took 30 years to get this way, but we want it done in 30 minutes. I mean, I understand that. I like fast results. This is weeks on the program, 6 weeks. Over here, it says percent change from baseline. This is your blood sugar on this side. This is your weight on this side. So the weight is the square boxes. The glucose is the rounds. We're going to look at weight first. We start up here at our starting point. On the weight, the first week, we lost 3% of our weight. So if I was 200 pounds, I would have lost 6 pounds in the first week. Now, that's a lot of weight to lose in 1 week, but it's rather typical that a person would lose it. And you know that they lose a lot of water, so it's not just all fat. At the same time, stay with me, this is what's so incredible. This is what I see in my office. At the same time, that same person who lost 3% of their weight lost 43% in their glucose level. If that doesn't encourage you, that your blood sugar when you first saw me was at 200, and the next time I see you, you're running 130, 140 area, if that doesn't encourage your heart in 1 week, I can't help you. And this is not unusual. This is the average, by the way. Some people are ahead of this. Let's go on. Let's go to week 2. Week 2, the weight has come down about 5, maybe 6%. Their blood sugar has dropped over 50%. The people that were running blood sugar levels of 200 are now running 100. We've almost got them out of the diabetic category. By week 3, and definitely by week 4, they are no longer diabetic. Do you have a month to give me? Will you treat yourself good for a month? You want to prove this to yourself? I hope you do. Well, we need to talk about some rats here. These rats got to eat whenever they wanted to. No, I'm not going to put anybody's name on this, okay? Just want you to think about it. These rats got to eat cheese any way they wanted to, day, night, noon, all over. They called it ad lib. What they found out is that if you snack throughout the day, people will call it grazing, and I don't want to be a cow, so anyway. So, low amplitude metabolic rate. When you eat repeated small meals throughout the day, what you wind up with is a suppressed metabolism, which means it's easier for you to gain weight on snacking. You say, but Doc, I don't eat that much. I go, I didn't say that. You have to say it. Your waistline always tells the truth. So the circadian rhythms and metabolic rhythms were what they call low amplitude, which means no real highs, no real lows, no good metabolic rate. So we come down here. What happened to my rat over here? Increased adiposity. That's a really nice way of saying they got fat. Glucose intolerance. That means that they were becoming diabetic. The glucose. Leptin resistance. Now, leptin is a chemical that the fat cell puts off that tells the brain when I've eaten enough or if I've eaten too much or whatever. When you become leptin resistant, your fat cells have been hollering at your brain, and your brain says, I don't care. And after a while, it goes, I can't care. I don't even get the message anymore. Liver pathology. I'm seeing more and more fatty liver disease, and the people don't drink a drop. Has nothing to do with alcohol intake. When I went through school, if you had a fatty liver, guess what I'd accuse you of? Yeah. And you say, I don't drink a drop, Doc. I'm going, yeah, I heard that one before. No. Fatty liver is now much greater in the general population who don't drink a drop of alcohol. Inflammation. Well, that's a big word. How are your knees doing? How's your elbows? How's your hands? You want to get inflammation out of the body? Fat cells, what the hormones that fat cells put out cause inflammation, not just of your hands, of the inside of your arteries. And down here at the bottom, motor coordination. I love when people walk in my office and they have thrown their cane out the window. They come in there like this, and they come like, oh, when do you want to get rid of that? You know, if you don't give people hope, why in the world would they want to see a doctor? If every time you go see the doctor, he says, you're getting worse. Next time you go in, you're getting worse. Take this pill. Next time you go in, well, that one didn't do enough, so we're not going to give you 2. And after 5 years, how many pills are you taking? There's got to be hope. If there's no hope, I can't figure out why people keep going back. I don't get it. If every time I went back and you gave me a bad rap, why would I want to see you again? Time restricted. These rats didn't get to eat all the time. In fact, they restricted it to a half a day. Now, if you want some human research, you'll like this one. Eating only within a 10-hour period fights fat. It goes on. The researcher reporting here, but when their eating was restricted to an 8 or 10-hour window. So if you start eating at 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 hours later it would be 4 o'clock. So they got all their eating in that 8 or 10-hour period. They became lean, fit, and healthy. The current study examined mice, and here at this point, that lacked the genes for biological clocks and were therefore predisposed to becoming morbidly ill. Those allowed a high-fat diet around the clock became obese and developed metabolic disease, while those that ate the same diet and the number of calories in a 10-hour period became lean and healthy. Both rats were genetically set up for being obese. One set of rats, let them eat as much as they want all day long. The other group of rats, we fed them in the 10-hour period that they got to eat the same amount of calories that this group got over here, and they got lean. They ate the same amount of food. Now you start to see that Dr. Capps, on his patients, may have been onto something. He had different rules. Don't eat 8.5 hours before your head hits the pillow. So what was he doing? He was confining all the eating down in a narrow time. Same rule apply. My rat study. The rats that were restricted in their time eating, the fat tissue, they weren't obese. Their glucose, they weren't diabetic. The leptin resistance went down. They didn't have liver pathology. They didn't have inflammation. And they could outrun the other one. They had better motor coordination. If it works for rats, it'll work for me. And it definitely will work for you. This is just a fun slide. Which weighs more, 5 pounds of fat or 5 pounds of muscle? You got it. That's the right answer. It's the size, folks. When you're losing weight and you see you're losing inches, okay, I don't care how you want to call it. If the scale stays exactly the same, your inches around the middle are going down, you are successful. Because it is possible that you also took up a walking program, no problem there, and you are gaining a pound of muscle and losing a pound of fat, and how's your scale going to know that? It won't. It can't. It's just a thing that you get upset about. How many of you kick your scale? Well, it didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. Hey, you can't win with scales. You get on them, and you get so happy, you go eat. Next day, you get on the scale, and you get so upset, you go eat. So, I'm not saying you have to weigh yourself, but the point is that scales are just a number. And if you're not going to take action, don't upset yourself. There's no need for more humiliation and having a bad day. Don't expect the scale to help you lose weight. And say, well, some people say, well, it gives me motivation. Well, if that does for you, that's worth it then. Obviously, lean muscle here takes up a whole lot less space. And so if you see someone and they say, well, I weigh 190, and you look at them and you go, wow, you must have a lot of muscle. You see another person who weighs 190 and you go, they have more table muscle. Dr. Joel Furman, some of you know him. Obviously, he's an advocate for health. But his formula says this: your future health is equal to your nutrients divided by your calories. Real basic. When you start making food selection, always choose the most amount of nutrients and the least amount of calories. Now, you want to know what your best buy is? You already got on a roll on this, okay? Your best buy in that realm, well, you've known me well enough by now. You know what I'm going to say, is cabbage. It's your best nutrient-dense food for the amount of calories you get. Why do you think cows eat so much grass? Well, it's because you put them out in the pasture, obviously. The point I'm trying to get at is they eat grass. They get all their protein, they get all their calcium, they make white milk out of green grass, and you figure out how they do that one. They make steak, they do all this out of what? And you think you're too good for grass. Well, take the principle. No, I don't want to eat grass, and they've got 4 stomachs, and I've got 1, and I don't have the enzymes to break it down. The point is, if you want to be healthy, you're going to eat as low as you can on the food chain, which means when I go to my garden and pick broccoli and eat it, I'm the first on the food chain. In the meat food chain, it's the little fish that's eaten by the bigger fish that's eaten by the bigger fish until you get up here to the tuna, and then you eat the tuna. You're on the wrong end of the food chain. If you eat the cow, how many bushels of grass do you think you ate in that 4-ounce hamburger? This is going to shock some of you. Probably about 3 or 4 bushels of grass. Now, by the time you eat 3 or 4 bushels of broccoli, you don't care if there ever was a hamburger to start with. But you can't overeat on healthy food if you don't mess with it. Now, you can make yourself all kinds of healthy burgers and oatmeal and all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying you can't overeat on that. I'm talking about if you ate nothing but fresh vegetables, it is literally impossible for you to overeat. If you don't believe me, try it for the next month, and then get on the scale. Here it is. I didn't bring any extra heads along, but benefits include treatment of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, headache, excessive weight, skin disorders, eczema, jaundice, scurvy, rheumatism, arthritis, gout, eye disorders, constipation, stomach ulcers, Alzheimer's disease. If I rattled off that, people would say, may I have a bottle? Will you please give me, how many tablets a day should I take? It's simpler than that. And until the rest of the world figures it out, folks, it's cheap. And if you really want to live reasonable, you can go to the farmer's market there in Asheville and get 50 pounds of this stuff for about $14. And I will guarantee you, you will live longer on that $14 than about any other way you can eat. And you'll be healthier on it. So you don't think I'm starving you. We're going to take a break here in just a few minutes. So you don't think that I'm starving you and I'm going to turn you into a protein deficient person. I want to cover one more area before we start getting into a lot of the details of what I expect you to do. I want you to notice broccoli up here at the top. About a half a cup of broccoli has 32 calories. Not too many calories. Over here, I have printed out what percent of those calories, how many is protein, how much is fat, and how much is carbohydrate. And yes, broccoli has fat in it. Not very much, but it does have fat. The calories, these 32 calories, in your half a cup of broccoli, 45% of them are protein. The cow taught you something. That cow isn't starving of protein. It's out there building steak on that grass, and you didn't know it. And you thought grass was just grass. Broccoli is one of the highest protein foods. In fact, the broccoli is higher in protein, calorie for calorie, than the cow that ate it, because the cow that ate it had to use some of it just to run the body. Cabbage, 24 calories, 22% protein, 7% fat, 71% carbohydrate. I'm a high carbohydrate diet person, if you want to put it. Everybody else is low carbs. I'm going, what's wrong with everybody? But when you say carbs, you mean sugar and pasta and everything that's white. When I say carbs, I mean unrefined carbohydrates. I'm talking broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, celery. I mean, celery, look at celery. It's got 17 calories and a half a cup. It's 21% protein. Even that stuff, but I want to tell you something about celery. If you tried to live on just celery, you'd starve quicker than not eating at all. Because it takes more calories by the time you chew it, digest it, process it, and eliminate it than what you get from it. It's actually called a negative food. The redeeming value, and by the way, don't throw it out. The redeeming value of eating celery is because the mineral content and the other things that are in there. It is still a good food. But I'm saying this is math here, if all you had was celery to eat, technically it takes more from you as far as fuel-wise than what you're going to get from it. So I never put anybody on a celery diet. Collard greens, 45 calories and a half a cup, 43%. You come on through this whole list. I want to point out one thing. Sweet potatoes are 6% protein. If you are dealing with any kind of a kidney, a renal insufficiency, your GFR is low, when your doctor says your kidneys aren't filtering too well, that's your food right there. Sweet potatoes are one of the foods that are the most easiest on dealing with the kidney. Next slide. Beans are much higher in calories per half cup. This is dry beans here. Their protein is obviously significant, and the fat and the carbohydrate. I want to point out the soybean. 134 calories in a half a cup, 33% protein, 33% fat, and 34% fat, and 33% carbohydrate. It's an incredibly, almost the perfect balanced food. Some of you may have heard bad things about soy. I propose for you, it's not the soy. It's what man has done to it. Enjoy the soybean, the edamames you squeeze out of the pod. See, if you had them all in a big bowl, you could eat them too quick. At least you have to squeeze them out of the pod. It takes a little more time and maybe a little more enjoyment. Tofu is still a good food, and soy milk is still a good food. A lot of your phony baloney and smart foods out there are the ones you have to worry about. And I'm going to give you 2 words to watch for. Soy protein isolate and soy protein concentrate. That's man-made, derived from the soybean, and those both compounds stimulate your cells toward cancer quicker or more rapidly than cow's milk, which is an animal protein. That's the ones I'd prefer that you stay away from. Soy protein isolate and soy protein concentrate. So when you go back to the store to buy your smart dogs, you may realize they may not be so intellectual. The last one here, I want to show you about nuts. Nuts have less protein, but a whopping load of calories. And if you do calories times the protein for the percentage, you realize that nuts are a good source of protein, but they're powerful. You don't need a lot of nuts. Seeds, a little bit higher in protein, a little bit lower in fat. And then you get to fruit. The only time I'd be worried about you is if you were a long-term fruitarian, you may have a problem with protein. You may. Because we'd like you to be between 8 to 10% of your diet is protein, and if you ate avocados at 5 and that's all you ate, or bananas or whatever, it may be some concern. That doesn't mean don't enjoy your fruit, doesn't mean don't enjoy your avocado. That is not the only source, because when you have an avocado with your broccoli, I think you got it made. Let's go ahead and I've got about 10 after 3. Some of you need to stretch your legs, ask me a question, And we will also leave time for questions at the end of the second part, too. Yes, ma'am. I got to get close so I can hear you. The rules for Dr. Cap's research, number one is you have to eat breakfast. Okay. Number two, you can snack or have lunch if you like, not a requirement. The third rule gets to be a hard one. No eating 8.5 hours before bedtime. And don't stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning to prove that, okay? Yes, ma'am.
But let's see, over the years, when they diagnosed me as being hypoglycemic,
Correct.
they told me that I should eat small amounts through the day.
Correct.
My blood sugar